All right, yo, so today we're going to be looking at the sampler instead of the simpler. Sampler is the simpler's beefier older brother in a sense, and I'm just going to be talking about how I'd use it. The sampler is a lot more in depth than the simpler, so I'm not going to go over everything because honestly I don't know everything you can do with it, but I'm going to talk about the things I use with it. So like before, just want to show you down here, this is the simpler, and I think you can actually switch between them pretty easily. You right click up here, simpler to sampler, you can go boom, straight to the other one, and you can go back in between them. And I found this article on LinkedIn of all places, or Indeed, yeah, or no, this is LinkedIn, or who cares where it is. I found this article here, and it explained the differences between them pretty well. The simpler is a nimble and efficient tool for quick and straightforward sample manipulation, while the sampler offers a comprehensive suite of features for more intricate sound design and instrument creation, which is pretty true. That's like the main differences. Like I said before, simpler I usually use if I'm just trying to play a sample in MIDI. I usually use it for 808s, or I use it for just like basic one shots. If I like how it sounds and I don't want to do any like crazy sound design stuff, that's when I'd use the simpler. The simpler is for keeping things simple. It's in the name, so keep it simple. So first things first, just to show off the multi-sampling, a good way to see that is by using sound fonts. You can see over here, I have a fuck ton of sound fonts. It's actually really bad. It slows down my computer. But I'm trying to find one that might be interesting. Final Fantasy VII. Here, we'll drag this over. This will open the sound font and everything. It'll take a little while, actually, so. All right, there we go. So it looks like I've already done this a ton of times already. I don't know why I didn't just look for one of these, but Ableton supports sound fonts if you're curious, if you want to use sounds from old games. There's a lot of good shit there. But I'm doing this just so I can show off the first tab of the sampler, and you'll see when we put it in, it automatically does it as the sampler because it knows that's going to be multi-sampling because there's multiple sounds, and you can see that right here. If you click zone, it'll show you where everything, all the multiple samples, multi-sample, where all these are on the keys. You can see all that. Let me plug in my keyboard actually. So you'll see here, it'll show you where you are too. It shows you where on the notes everything is. These are just all drums, but you can see it's got everything there. All the multiple samples are there. That's what zone is for. You can also like mute certain things, solo them. You can adjust velocity and all that. There's a lot of things you can do here if you want to mess around with. So the sampler has a lot of stuff to it, as you can see down here. I'm not going to go through all of it just because there's so much and I don't really want you to get like mind fucked with everything you can do. I'm trying to keep this very simple, trying to make the sampler simple, but not as simple as the simpler. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just going to talk about like a couple techniques I use the sampler for over the simpler. And this here is one of the main ones. And I usually use it to turn vocal like one shots into leads. So this is a pretty old song I made. But I mean, I just want to play that part. I just like this song. I never finished it though. I'm still working on it. But this is the part I'm talking about, this vocal. So you can see here, this is Kashmir Vocal Tone 09 if you want to mess with it. And we can show it in the browser here. This is what it sounds like normally. That's just what it is default. It's just that one shot. So what I did here is I made it a extended like lead note. And this is really the main time I use the sampler over the simpler. There's a ton of other things you can do. I haven't even really gotten into all the multi-sampling and everything you can do. Actually, before I go over what I did, I'll look over the tabs real quick. You know, we have the pitch and the oscillator. This lets you use ADSR to mess with more things. You can change the pitch envelope here, how much. You can actually do some pretty cool things by manipulating all of these. You can change the spread. Up here, you can Let me help you out. Here you can manipulate by FM and AM. That's FM and AM synthesis. I wouldn't worry too much about this. That's a whole different can of worms. That's a whole nother thing. I'm not too well versed on it, so I'm just not even gonna talk about it. Over here is a pretty important section of things right here. This is the spread. It makes your sound more stereo. So here for transposition, it moves it up or down by semitones, and semitones are just half steps. Let me actually just show you. A semitone is just each one of these notes. So this is one semitone up, two semitones up. Two semitones is a full step. I mean, I'm not gonna go too in deep. It's just gonna be too confusing. It's music theory shit. Just know each one of these is a semitone, and it reflects here, so I can move it up like 4 semitones. And then detune is in synths, so it's more surgical specific detuning. If you want to mess with it, it's there. And then glide, this is really important especially for this sound. It makes actually I'll go over it when I explain the sound. Next, we have the filter and the global. It's simple stuff, there's a filter here. It's the same as the one for the sampler. There's just, a lot more you can do with it. And you actually have a visual this time. Well, you have a visual with the sampler, but you have a bit more tools, a bit more things you can do here. And then this here is the filter envelope. So now you have an ADSR envelope that works with the filter. So you can affect how fast it peaks, you can affect its sustain, all that good stuff. And here we have a global ADSR filter right over here. You see a lot of the things from the sampler are here. They're just more fleshed out. So you can do a lot more. You can get a bit more in depth with everything you want to do. And then down here we have, panning. There's a random panning. So it gives you a percentage of like a chance for it to randomly pan the sound. There's a 70% chance, so there's a pretty good chance it's gonna be panning, unless you're really unlucky. Don't gamble. I've learned my lesson. Like 3K down the casino. Time. It shrinks or expands the length of the envelope in the sampler. Don't worry too much about it. I don't mess with this too much. Neither do I mess with time key. Voices is important though, and it's the same as voices in the sampler. It's how many samples you can trigger at once. And then there's retrigger, which I forgot to talk about in the last video, but I'll talk about this later, and I won't forget this time. And in modulation here, there's the LFO. You have 3 LFOs this time in the sampler, as opposed to just the 1 in the sampler. So you can apply 3 LFOs to a bunch of different things, make some crazy sounds. And then the auxiliary envelope they just give you an extra envelope for you to put on anything here. You have all these options. You can see there's a lot of spinning plates, a lot of moving parts, a lot of rotating gears on the sampler. So you can really make some crazy shit, but you can also really get lost and really confused in what to even do with it, especially if you're starting. Honestly, unless you're really into sound design, you're not going to need most of this stuff. Just stick to the sampler, get comfortable with the sampler. Then if you want to try making some cool sounds or manipulating stuff, you can dip your toes into the sampler and start messing with some stuff here. And then MIDI, you can apply, global MIDI controls to different things. It's cool. I don't mess with it too much. So for this sound in particular, you can hear the defining characteristics of it are the extended note. It's not just a one shot. And also this. You hear how it glides up? Those are the 2 most important things. And I use this technique for a lot of my leads. This is kind of I guess I'm giving away a secret that I do a lot. And this is actually how I think In Love with the Ghost does a lot of their sounds. This is actually how I learned to do it, trying to remake their stuff. This was a good way. I don't know if I saw a tweet or an interview or something where they said this is how they do it, or maybe I just figured it out. But a lot of sounds and healing, I'm pretty sure they use this type of technique for their vocals, which is cool. I hope they're not I hope they don't mind me explaining all this, but So to make this an extended note, first thing, I had to put it on sustain loop like this. If I put it on this loop, it's going to sound like that, which is a little messed up. Actually, to explain it, we'll just remake the sound. We'll just remake it from start. We have this here. Take the sound, put it in the MIDI, put it in the sampler. So first things first, I would change the mode to sustain loop so it would go back and forth. And then I would play it like this. Oh, you can't hear any. Oh, I soloed the wrong thing. I would play here. And what you want to do is find a good point to sustain the note, a good point to like loop it, right? And it's to taste. I found that right here. Let me turn the volume. It's a little quiet. I found that right here. That's pretty good. Like you want a consistent note, and you can throw in the tuner here. Ableton's tuner, just right up there. Ableton has a pretty nice tuner. And you can see over there, it's a C sharp. If I do it like this, it still maintains the note. But sometimes with certain sounds, you'll find that it will go from like a D to a G to a D to a G. You don't want that. You want it to, or maybe you do, but most times you want it to just be on the one note so you can actually play it and tune it properly. So it's not like ping-ponging all over the place. So right here, boom, it's C sharp. That's pretty good. It's only moving up like a couple cents up and down. We can find a better one. Here we go. That's even better. But you'll notice there's that clicking sound, which sounds like ass. That shit sucks. So what you can do, we crossfade it. Just that little bit of crossfade, boom, fixes the clicking, and now it's a sustained note. Maybe a little bit more crossfading. Boom, look at that. Cool. Now we have our sustained note. So one thing you may be wondering is, Coco, where are the warp modes? Why are there no warp modes for the sampler? And to be honest, I don't fucking know. It's actually baffling. Simpler has warp modes. Oh god, I can't. It's showing. Fuck. Hold on. Let me find the. Look here. Simpler has warp modes, and if you remember from the video before, the warp mode makes it so that putting it on complex makes it so that it doesn't speed up the sample and it doesn't repitch it or, you know, rewarp it to change the pitch. You know, it'll keep the same volume. So if you go back to the simpler here, we changed it to complex. They're all the same length. Unfortunately, the sampler doesn't have that. I don't know why. I'm on Ableton 11 and they still don't have it. I don't really understand why not. I feel like it wouldn't be hard to just put in, but maybe they have a reason, or maybe it's here and I can't find it, but to my knowledge, it is not there. So anyways, we have our note. We have our sample here. We have our nice little one shot. I'm going to move it up just because I like it a little faster. So there we go. Look at that. We can even play chords with it. No. There you go. You can play some cool shit like that. Just like any piano, you got all these keys. So next thing what we're going to do is we're going to go to pitch and we're going to turn on this glide here. And glide's pretty cool. Makes all the notes glide like this. It's a pretty sick sound. I like it a lot. And you'll notice we have it on 4 voices, but even if, let me bring up the piano roll. Even if I play all the notes, only one is going to be played because glide by design, it's a legato monophonic thing. So only you can't glide with multiple notes like that. I mean, you can, but for the sake of this, you know, it's going to be with one note. You can see over there, it's a monophonic glide. And I usually turn up the time a little bit, so it's like a smoother glide up. So there you go. And then I'll just drag this MIDI down here. That's a really cool sound that I use a lot. You can really do it with any vocal sample. Here, we'll Do it with this one. Or it doesn't even have to be a vocal sample. It can be just any sound, really. Let me see sound. Let me just search sound. Here, Chief keep going bang bang. You can do that with this. Look at that. It's, I don't know when you'd ever use this, but you can do some wild shit. So yeah, that is like the main reason I would use the sampler. As I said, it's usually for sound fonts or for making a sound like this, or when I need to multi-sample with multiple sounds. If you're thinking about which one to use, you don't know if you got to use the simpler or the sampler, just use the simpler. And you can switch over to the sampler when you feel like you need one of its extra effects. Like if you're making something in the simpler and you're like, hey, I want another LFO, you can easily just click, boom, simpler to sampler, sampler to simpler, and move over to the other one, keeping everything, and you can just use one of these extra features. But if you're just starting out, I don't think you're really going to be using the sampler too much at first. So just stick with the simpler, get comfortable with that, and a lot of the things you learn there will actually be applicable over here. So that's pretty much it. I know I didn't really explain all the functions of the sampler too much. I just wanted to kind of give some examples of when I'd use it and a bit of the differences. I'll be honest, I don't know all the stuff that you can do with the sampler. I'm still learning myself. If anybody knows of more things you can do, feel free to comment them or link to any things down below. You guys have been pretty helpful. I've been learning a lot just by making these because, you know, I'm not an expert. I'm self-taught. My mother's basement into this closet, just making beats. I'm a YouTube, graduate of music production. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.